Welcome to the Hot Sauce. This is Angel Planels, a registered dietitian nutritionist in Seattle, Washington. It's May 2024, and I'm currently at 263 subscribers, and the goal is to make it to 300 by the end of the year. So please like, subscribe, and share. You can also catch this, previous, and future episodes on your favorite podcasting platform. Let's get right into it. Today, we are going to Ellensburg, Washington, to celebrate the retirement of two professors who have taught in the nutrition department at Central Washington University for 43 years in Dr. David G. and 38 years in Dr. Ethan Bergman. I enjoyed recording this episode as I wanted to celebrate two folks that have been influential on a state and national level for the nutrition and dietetics world. They are having a retirement celebration today, but wanted to give them their flowers as they have taught a number of students throughout the years. And I know through the recording that they both have lots of humility as well as a sense of pride for the students that they have graduated from Central Washington University. So please enjoy the episode. Welcome back to the Hot Sauce. Today we have a very special episode. I have two gentlemen here that are in Washington State, and they are about to retire from our profession. And I wanted to highlight them for their contribution to the field of nutrition and dietetics. We have Dr. David G. and Dr. Ethan Bergman here. And what we're going to do is we're going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. So let's go ahead and have David. We'll kick it off with you. Would you like to introduce yourself and talk about your journey into the field of nutrition, what inspired you to join, where you went to school, and what jobs you've done along the way?
Okay, well, my name is David G., and I am completing over 43 years of teaching at Central Washington University. I did all my schooling, undergraduate and graduate at the University of California, Davis. My undergraduate degree was in bacteriology. And when I was there, even in those ancient days, I was lucky enough to get involved in an undergraduate research study that resulted in a publication. It was really interesting for me to be involved in the research. And as interesting as I found the research to be, most people would not be all that interested in how an obscure marine bacteria metabolizes fructose. I'm not even sure marine bacteria are all that interested in that sort of thing. And so from there, I received a graduate assistantship from the food science department. And almost in total contrast to the experience I had as in research in bacteriology, the research I did in food science was very much applied. And I got a job right after finishing my master's degree with a company that still was involved in the shipping of fruits and vegetables under modified atmospheres. And my research was the use of these atmospheres on meats. And so for a while after I completed, I started doing this job in Salinas, California. I came to the point where we were waiting for the FDA to approve the process on fresh meats with carbon monoxide. And in the meantime, we wanted to see if the atmosphere, which could really stunt bacterial growth in meats with carbon dioxide, would work commercially on fish. And so I spent a few weeks in the fish industry trying to figure out how to stack fish up in a way that the atmosphere would surround the fish so that they would be beneficial. And then it just kind of struck me, all the science I had in food science as well as in the undergraduate work. I thought, I'm here now figuring out how to stack fish so that the atmosphere could permeate the meats. So that was when another professor at UC Davis, Al Tappo, offered me a graduate assistantship to come back to Davis to do some work with vitamin E. So that's how I entered the field of nutrition. It was a science, and I got a graduate assistantship to do it. And I had not taken a single nutrition class at that point in my career when I started my doctoral research at UC Davis in nutrition. Obviously, there's more to the story, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And then, so you went to UC Davis, and then where, I guess you were mentioning before, what inspired you to move to Ellensburg, Washington?
Well, most of my colleagues in graduate school were looking for positions right after they finished their doctoral degree, and I was like a few months behind them, and I saw this listing for a university I'd never heard of before, Central Washington University, and I thought I'd look on the map, and I saw that it was right near Wenatchee National Forest, and at that time in my life I was doing a lot of hiking and backpacking, so I thought, well, it'd be worth taking a peek at the area. And so for viewers out there listeners out there who've never been to Central Washington, it's very different from Western Washington. When you visualize Washington State, people think about how rainy and overcast the west side of the state is, but the east side of the state is very dry. It's a desert if you want, for all the irrigation there. And so the department chair flew me into Yakima, a city south of Ellensburg, as I put it, under the cover of darkness. I couldn't see what I was landing into. Driving over the interstate, I didn't realize there was sagebrush all around me. I wake up that morning in his house. He hosted me, and it had this beautiful, spectacular view of the Stewart Mountain, and that kind of was a big selling point there. That I could see these beautiful mountains right out across the campus, basically. And the first place he took me he had me pegged. He took me to this mountain lodge about 20 minutes out of Ellensburg, and we had this nice hearty breakfast there, and he drives me back to Ellensburg. I had a bunch of interviews really quickly, and the next thing I know, they whisked me away in a car going down the Yakima Canyon, and then in an airplane going back to Davis, California. So that was my introduction to Central Washington University in Ellensburg. They emphasized to me that it was a teaching position, primarily a teaching position, not a research position. They saw in my application that I had a ton of research, but very little teaching. And as I mentioned, if my application were to be reviewed today for a position at Central in our department, the lack of teaching experience would have eliminated me in the very early screening stages. So I was lucky that there apparently weren't a whole lot of candidates applying for the job.
Okay. And then, if you don't mind, what are some of the things that you've done besides teaching? I know you've done research. What types of things have you researched throughout the years?
Well, I'd say the first 25 plus years, I was kind of I did research that there was an opportunity to do something with. For example, I had some work with the local apple juice maker, Treetop, and they funded a research project with me. So I was doing stuff like that. But then about 15 years ago, I did a sabbatical leave where I reinvented myself to be an analyst using the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, the NHANES survey. And I really wanted to learn how to do that, because here was a set of really high quality data with a really large sample size that's representative of the United States population, really high quality data, and best of all, well, two things. Best of all is, number one, it's already collected, and number two, it's free. And for us at Central Washington University, with our teaching load, it becomes a real challenge to find the time to get funding to do really meaningful research, the kind of research we can do today with the NHANES database. So really for the past 12, 13 years, all my students that I have mentored have focused in on using the NHANES database. There's been a wide range of topics. I guess the achievement in research in that particular area was we just received notification a few weeks ago from the Journal of the American Heart Association that our study was accepted for publication. And that study looked at the prevalence of high blood pressure in Mexican Americans in the United States, and showed that in contrast to the non-Hispanic white adult population, the prevalence of hypertension is increasing in the U.S. and Mexican Americans and flat in whites. The age-adjusted prevalence of hypertension is actually higher in Mexican Americans than in whites. So proud of that accomplishment to kind of cap off my career at Central Washington University.
Congratulations. That's awesome to hear.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll flip it over to Ethan. And Ethan, yes, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your journey into the profession and how you did what you've done? Go for it.
Sure. Thank you, Angel. My name is Ethan Bergman, and I kind of had a convoluted way to get into the profession. I played baseball in college and kind of followed wherever they recruited me. So I went to a community college for 2 years and then to a 4-year school in the state of Oregon. And basically got a bachelor's degree in biology. And I did well academically. I always have studied well and done well. I graduated summa cum laude. But I really kind of followed my baseball career and got a bachelor's degree in biology, minor in chemistry, and then went on to University of Oregon for a master's degree in biology. So my first 2 degrees were in biology. Then I decided I needed some gap, I guess they call it gap time now. And my brother and I went to seminary for a while in Minnesota. And then my brother wanted to go to Europe. So we went to Europe together and hitchhiked around Europe for several months. Came back and decided I was going to get married to my current wife, my only wife, my favorite wife. And and I didn't have a profession. So I went back and got a degree, another master's degree and a teaching certificate. Started applying for teaching jobs. And I got a job teaching. I actually got 3 job offers on the same day. One would have been teaching missionary kids in Madagascar off the coast of Africa. The other was at a remote school in north central Washington. And the one that my wife chose was teaching in Seward, Alaska, which is on the Kenai Peninsula. So we got married and moved up the next week. I ended up teaching in a small school, which was biology, physics, computer science, math, and I coached wrestling and volleyball. So we, lots of preps every day. And we did that for about 5 years. And I went all over the state coaching because Alaska's a big state and we were, long ways from places. So I ended up going to Barrow, Alaska and Kodiak and different places coaching. And then I started, one of the things I had to do in my biology curriculum was to teach health, and part of that was nutrition. So I ended up thinking, well, I don't know a whole lot about nutrition. So I went to Washington State University one summer to take a nutrition class, and it turned into a PhD program. So I met my advisor while I was there and went back and taught another year in Seward, then came out the following year and started a PhD program in nutrition. And my first interest was the science of nutrition, the looking at the metabolism and physiology and those sorts of things. And my advisor said, hey, why don't you become a registered dietitian while you're doing this? And I said, what is that? And so she explained it to me. And so I did. I took a few additional courses in addition to what I was doing. And back then you could do, with an advanced degree, you didn't have to do a 9-month internship. You could do what was shorter than that. So I ended up working at Deaconess Hospital in Spokane for a summer. And that was my, in essence, internship in addition to my other stuff. And, so I finished that PhD, and one of my friends that was at Washington State was in lab with was on leave of absence from her job at Central Washington University. Her name is Patsy Hollingberry. Her actual name then was Patsy Whitmer, but she got married to Bud Hollingberry, who's from Yakima, and she finished the year before I did. And then she went back to teach at Central and decided, she got pregnant and decided not to continue on teaching. So she called me and said, hey, Ethan, you want a job? Well, it wasn't that simple, of course. I had to apply for it and go through all the hoops. And like David, I was fortunate because there weren't very many applicants for my job. I had teaching experience at high school level, but I had a research assistantship at Washington State, so I didn't teach any university classes when I was there because I was paid to do the research. But they hired me, and almost 38 years later, we're retiring together. We had, David and I had, our offices were right across a hallway from each other, and when I was there, David had a little recording machine on the phone, and we shared a phone line between the two of us. So I'd get a phone call and I'd answer, or I'd get the phone would ring, I'd answer it, and it was for David, and I'd yell across the hall and I'd say, "Hey David, it's for you." So he'd pick up, and most of the time I'd hang up, but sometimes I'd listen. No, that's not true, David. I didn't. But we'd also have this little recording machine that was in David's office, so it would record any calls that we got. And back then, university didn't issue us computers, so I had my own computer that I had used for my PhD research. But that's kind of how I got into the profession. Finished all the requirements for the RD, and back then you can only take the RD exam twice. So I missed the fall date, so I took it in the spring. And by then I taught. David and I were the only two people teaching in the program, so we taught everything. And that was my best studying for the exam, by the way. I taught all those courses and had to know how to teach them. But that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it.
Okay, cool, awesome. Well, you both kind of talked about what inspired you to get into academia. So I guess the next question, I'll keep it with you, Ethan. What do you think has been the most enlightening and also the most humbling aspect of being in academia?
Well, early on, I started volunteering for different things. The president of what was then the
WSDA, Washington State Dietetic Association.
Yeah, Washington State Dietetic Association. There it is. The equivalent, or the what is now WASAN. But she called me and said, "Hey, you want to be a fundraising chair for the Dietetic Association in Washington?" And I said, "Well, sure." And then I said, "What do I have to do?" So I said yes before I asked. And that's been one of the enlightening things. And kind of my modus operandi is somebody asked me to do something, I'd say yes, and then I'd find out what it was. And it's worked out pretty well. Sometimes I was juggling lots of balls at once, but that led to all the different volunteer positions that I went to. So I was fundraising chair for a couple of years, and then did other things in the Washington Dietetic Association, and up through president, and then to the House of Delegates, and then I became what was then the ADA, American Dietetic Association, but we changed the name of it while in the time I was president and past president. So I did all those things. And that was kind of real enlightening, getting to learn about people in all over the world, because we went lots of different places representing the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, went to lots of different international congresses on dietetics, and then just different places to represent the Academy. So that was probably one of the most enlightening things, is just learning about lots of people and how different countries were practicing nutrition and dietetics. As far as humbling goes, I think it's always, David and I, have been always very student-centered, and just where our students have gone over the years and what they've done, and just some of the wonderful things that they've done. We have a student, Emily, who works for Holt International, which is a company that does nutrition in orphanages internationally. And just some of the impact she's had trying to teach nutrition to those individuals and those different orphanages, to make sure that kids get what they need, so that the children aren't malnourished and they have a potential, that reach their potential for growth, both physically and mentally. Just seeing how some of our students have gone on to do great things like that. Emily DeLacy, she's with Holt International, and we could name lots of others. I think that's humbling, is to feel like we've had a small part in that developmental process.
Absolutely. Awesome. And then final piece of this question, what do you think, unless you felt the enlightening was part of that, what's the most proudest accomplishment you felt professionally?
Well, I think the students that we've produced out of Central is probably right on top of that. Some of the things we've done, we did a lot of school meal research, and some of the things that we, just simple things like timing of the meals. If you have the meal too early in the day, kids don't eat very much. If you have the meal time not long enough, they don't eat very much. One of the things that kind of is becoming more commonplace, in elementary schools, most elementary schools have lunch first, then recess after lunch. Mm-hmm. And that is changing. And one of the things that we did in our research was to look at those two different situations, either recess before lunch or recess after lunch. And we found that if they had recess first and then ate lunch, they'd eat more. And so then they were better fueled to learn in the afternoon. And that's kind of becoming more commonplace. And I think that was partly, well, I think largely due to the studies that we did at Central.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I will move David back over. And David, same questions apply to you. What would you say has been the most enlightening and the most humbling aspect of being in academia?
Before I answer that, I'd like to kind of go back in time when you were asking about how I got into.
Oh, sure.
And the tie-in with dietetics. So I replaced a faculty member there who was a food scientist, and the program at Central was really tiny. There was just two of us. It was Patsy Whitmer, as Ethan mentioned, myself. And Patsy was a registered dietitian. I had a PhD in nutrition and a master's degree in food science, and I think that Central thought they were going to get 2 for 1. They would get somebody with expertise in nutrition and maybe continue this move towards the food science program. At the same time, just prior to my arrival, Patsy successfully did all the requirements to get our program accredited by the academy, the academy, the education portion. So we were what would be called a didactic program in dietetics in 1981. So it became clear to me that we didn't have the manpower with just 2 people to do both a bona fide food science program and a nutrition program. And I could see, having come from a full-blown food science department, that we had no equipment to do food science. But we had what they called a food laboratory, which was a glorified kitchen. And I could see that this opening with the didactic program dietetics, that we had a pathway for students in our program to enter, a really, significant career opportunity. And so that it was a deliberate decision on my part, was to focus on developing that DPD program. And so early on, I knew that, if we're going to be a presence in the profession, I needed, even though I wasn't a registered dietitian, I needed to get involved in the Washington State Dietetic Association. So I started attending meetings. I'd never been to a dietetics meeting before. I'd been to nutrition research conferences, but not dietetics. And so that was a eye-opening experience. The first thing I noticed was, having never been to a dietetics conference, something that you and I and Ethan still notice today, is the gender gap between men and women. And I remember that first conference in the Seattle Center, just having my eyes open. There are almost all women in this room, because at the research level, it was pretty close to 50-50 split. And I thought, actually, this is pretty good. And I was enjoying the conference, and there was the first coffee break. And I went back to go to the bathroom, having consumed a bunch of coffee, and I saw this long line of women standing in front of the women's restroom. Opening in front of the men's restroom, as you experienced it, zipped right to there, came out, and there's still a long line of women. The second coffee break happened. I said, I got to go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, and there's they recruited the 2 strongest looking dietetic women to stand guard in front of the men's restroom. And they basically said, you're not coming in. You have to go out of the building, down a couple of buildings, to find an open bathroom that I could use. So that was a kind of a surprising introduction to the dietetic profession. But I developed a lot of wonderful friendships and professional relationships with dietitians. And to this day, I tell students, if you're interested in nutrition, don't be like me. Don't not get your dietetic credentials, because so many jobs out there require that you become a registered dietitian, and that's as true today as it was back then. I actually, when I first got there, and Patsy was getting ready to go to Washington State, she said that, since you have a PhD, you have this advanced degree in nutrition, all you have to do is to get X number of hours that I could accomplish in the summertime. I just needed to get some clinical experience. And to tell you the truth, she said, yeah, you just have to go to, one of the two hospitals in Yakima, and in one summer you'll get all the hours that you're going to need. I felt like it was a disservice to the profession if I were to do that route, go that route, and become an RD by just spending X number of hours working in a hospital. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't choose to go that direction. Fortunately, our program started to grow pretty quickly. Once we activated the didactic program of dietetics, and we were able to hire wonderful people like Ethan. And when we started our dietetic internship, that was a huge plus for us. That resulted in a third tenure track position. And then, I think I've done the same, Angel. We hit Netflix, and all of them were dietitians except for me. And so there really wasn't a need for me to become a registered dietitian. I was surrounded by registered dietitians. So that's, we became a significant participant in the dietetic education arena in the Pacific Northwest.
Awesome.
So maybe it fills in a little bit of the gaps.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. And then, tell us about, what's been the most enlightening and humbling aspect of being in academia? What would you say?
Well, it's kind of related to what Ethan said about passing the RD exam by teaching all these classes. Central, one of the many slogans they've had over the years is by teaching we learn. And that's the one thing that is so true, is that you discover how well you know something when you try to teach it to somebody else. And I know there are topics out there that when I'm done with that topic, I said, man, I could have done a lot better job than I did. And I realized it's because I didn't have really good command of the topic. Other areas, my best lectures are the ones that I really know the area really well. So that has been enlightening, and I pass that on to my students. I even down to study groups in all my upper division classes. I encourage study groups to be formed. I give them extra credit based on how well the group does as a team. And I tell them, when you study together as a group, you're going to be in the situation where you're going to teach each other these topics. So somebody will have a question and you have to explain it to them. And, you'll learn whether you understand that material or not when you try to teach it to them. So that is something that I discovered about myself, and I think it's true across the board.
Absolutely. And then, what would you say is the most proudest accomplishment professionally?
We had a nice little ceremony, the university recognizing promotions and tenure and so forth. And then Ethan and I and a number of others were awarded the emeritus status. That was fine and all that. But I'm really looking forward to the reception that we're having tomorrow, where we have at least put the word out to our alums of the food science nutrition program that their two old professors are finally hanging up their caps and gowns, and we're going to have this little retirement get together. I'm really looking forward, hopefully, to see a number of students that have graced my classrooms. I know at least two students from our very first class are going to be there, and so in terms of accomplishments, that's the fact that we've influenced so many students over the decades that we've taught at Central.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate both of you for what you do, because I think academia is one of these things that people may not truly appreciate, but the number of lives that you've dealt with throughout, and that's why I brought you on, because even though you're not a dietitian, you're like an honorary dietitian, because you've got people to come into the field. So thank you for both of your service. So all right, so Going back to you, David, if you could do it all over again in your career, is there anything you would change, or would you keep it the same?
Yeah.
All right. Well, technical difficulties. No worries. He's probably having a conversation with himself right now.
Yeah, he probably is.
So,
Yeah.
all right, he's gonna come back on. So I'm gonna go ahead. We will. So let's go to you, Ethan.
Okay.
And when he gets back on, we'll go ahead and add him. But if you could do it all over again in your career, is there anything you would change, or would you keep it the same?
Well, David mentioned this, that, I just feel lucky that I kind of stumbled into this, because I really didn't plan to become a registered dietitian when I started. I told you about my kind of following my baseball dream until I could tell that I wasn't going to make it in that arena. And I was always interested in the sciences and nutrition, with my biology, chemistry background. It really was a good combination. And so this is a really good applied way to use biology and chemistry. And that, I really enjoy teaching too. I remember when somebody asked me when I graduated from high school what I wanted to do, I said, well, I know one thing I don't want to do. I don't want to teach. And, that it came back to haunt me, because I started teaching in high school and I really enjoyed it. And then when I went to university, same thing. It's just a lot of fun to be around. Well, David is a wonderful colleague. We shared right next door to each other, and we did a lot of stuff socially, and our wives and the four of us do things together. And so it's been a great social aspect of the job. But then just interacting with students and helping them get to that next level, and just seeing them excited and making big surges forward when a lot of students that were not really that great when they started, but they just learned a lot and went on to do great things. So I wouldn't really change anything. After almost 38 years in the profession, it is really very satisfying to be going out at this point. So I would keep it the same.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything you would change, or anything you would keep the same?
So if I were to do things differently, probably the big thing was, instead of being an opportunistic researcher for the first 20 years of my career, I wish I had discovered and made the commitment to learn how to use the NHANES database earlier in my career, because it's been really interesting, and my students, both undergraduates and graduate students, can do really meaningful research with data that the U.S. taxpayers have paid for. So that's what I would have done differently.
Okay.
Teaching wise, it was an accident, really. Like I said, I didn't have any experience teaching prior to coming to Central, but I really enjoy teaching. I really enjoy the students. As I said, I don't remember if I said it before or after I got cut off. I'm really looking forward to seeing some of my old students from the past, and just feel really fortunate that I stumbled across this profession of teaching in higher education.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So 2 questions ago, we'll keep you on. What does the future hold for you?
Well, as far as work, I have really enjoyed, as I said, doing research with NHANES and working with graduate students. Teaching, during the pandemic was difficult for me and many others in higher education. It was really difficult for students at all levels. I did not enjoy the online experience. However, I found doing this sort of one-on-one or one-on-two video conferencing, primarily using Zoom, to be a very effective way of working with students, with my graduate students specifically. And on Zoom, we can share a computer that has the statistical software SAS on it, and so I can help them with their problems as far as doing the computer coding required to analyze NHANES data. I really do want to kind of keep my mind active, I could either play Sudoku or crossword puzzles or something like this, or I could write computer code, which really isn't all that much different in some respects to Sudoku. There's certain logic that has to go on when you're playing some of these games. So I am, right now, I'll take it a year at a time, in planning on supervising 2 more students finish their master's degree in nutrition next year. I also began a collaboration with one of my former students, who's now a professor at the Pacific Northwest University Medical School in Yakima, and I'm going to be working with a second medical student on a nutrition project in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to keep my toe in the water, so to speak, in terms of nutrition research. But I anticipate that we're going to be doing a fair amount of traveling. We're going to France this fall. We just bought a small little RV, so we hope to go back to some of the camping places that we frequented quite often when we were young adults. So that's what my future is looking like.
Okay, awesome. I hope you truly enjoy it. It's a well-deserved time. So, all right, let me move it back to Ethan. And Ethan, what is the future holding for you?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I went to seminary for a while back when I was young and witless. Now that I'm old and witless, I finished seminary. I got a Master of Divinity degree from Lutheran Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I'm an ordained Lutheran minister, and actually got called to be the vicar at Grace Episcopal Church here in Ellensburg. It's a part-time gig. So I've been doing that for the last about 20 months, I guess. And so that's kind of part of my future, I think, do that part-time. And it's a great congregation, very social justice oriented, and we do quite a few things related to, like the fish bank in town was started at that church, and they supported food bank, and also there's one on camp that I was involved in starting back in 2015. So, kind of continuing that sort of thing. As Lutheran minister, I've been involved in our Global Missions World Hunger Committee for quite a few years, and we have a sister companion synod in Tanzania and Africa. So I was there October last fall, and then we're going back in July, and it's basically building relationships with people there and using my nutrition skills too, kind of wearing 2 hats. They have a Lutheran hospital, Lugala Lutheran Hospital, that does refeeding of malnourished children, and so I've been involved in trying to complete the formula they use to refeed those kids, bring in a bunch of multivitamin minerals over with us when we go in July to try to help with that refeeding program. That sort of thing. The vicar will be as, they haven't been throwing anything at me yet when I preach, so I guess I'll keep doing that until they do. And then the thing in Tanzania is really very fulfilling to get to know all these great people, and they come our way sometimes, we go their way. So this time it's our turn to go their way. So that's kind of what my future holds. My wife and I and our kids, we hiked the Camino de Santiago in Spain last August, and we hope to do some of those sorts of things too. Maybe in Spain again, maybe Italy, other places too. We like to travel. So that's private.
Well,
kind of our future.
I hope you enjoy all your travels, and that sounds awesome. Sounds amazing. So, final question, and I could chat with you both all day. I appreciate your time because it's Wednesday evening here, and I know you could be spending time with the family. I could be doing the same. But the final question is, any words of wisdom for the next generation of dietitians? So, Ethan, you have the floor.
Well, one of my selling points whenever I talk to students about becoming a registered dietitian nutritionist is that it's really a profession that gives you all kinds of opportunities. And we have examples of students that have graduated from Central that in a clinical setting in a hospital for years, and then they decided, well, I'm getting tired of that, and maybe I'll go back and maybe I'll change my profession and I'll become a food service manager at a school food service. And they had to do some additional kind of bringing their areas up to speed, but they could make that transition. And in both cases, they're a registered dietitian nutritionist. So, you could almost change professions because of the myriad of different ways that dietitians are trained, but still maintain that profession. So I think it gives you the opportunity, like many people do, change your profession many times, but still maintain your registered dietitian nutritionist credential. So I think that's kind of one of the selling points I have, and all of them are exciting. I mean, oftentimes people come through our program, they're really clinically oriented, and then they go through the internship and they go through school food service and they fall in love with it, and they do a great job there. So, I think it just gives you lots of opportunities to apply your skills and then have huge impacts on people at so many different levels. So my selling point is words of wisdom is, this is a way to be trained in a profession that is very caring, very service oriented, but also it is very fulfilling because you have different ways that you can apply it in many different sub areas of nutrition and dietetics.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right, and we'll flip it over to David. So any words of wisdom for the next generation of dietitians?
Well, two things. One I alluded to before. I love sciences. As I said, I really enjoyed my undergraduate research experience in bacteriology. But if I were to tell somebody, "Oh, I'm a bacteriologist," nobody would really care. But when I say I'm a nutritionist, or if somebody says they're a dietitian, everybody eats, and there's just so much information, good and bad, out there that people will more often than not have questions for me, and that's been a real positive thing that I've experienced, and I'm sure future dietitians, nutritionists will experience, is that people have a true interest in learning more about something that we do 3 or more times a day. The other thing is that I think dietetics is entering a really exciting but challenging time. The field of nutrition is still pretty well locked into one size fits all. So we make these dietary guidelines for all Americans, and I think the era of specified diets, for people who have certain types of genotypes, is going to be growing. So the whole thing of nutrigenomics is going to, I think, it's not prime time yet, but I can see in the near future where they will be, a dietitian or a nutritionist will be able to really customize diets, and that'll be really exciting. I think it'll be very impactful. It'll be very challenging because you just can't say, "Oh, eat less saturated fat and eat more fruits and vegetables," and just leave it at that. I think they can be much more specific in terms of the recommendations that they make. So I think it's an exciting future where, in fact, if dietitians want to continue calling themselves the nutrition experts, it really becomes an opportunity for them to show off what they know. Because in the end, nutrition is the study of nutrients, but people eat food, and you really need to know what nutrients are in what foods and how do you prepare those foods so that they are acceptable to the individual. And that's something that today's dietitians can do better than in any other profession. And I think that the need for properly trained dietitians is going to grow as we move forward in time.
All right, so let me put us back on all the screen together. All right, so cool. I greatly appreciate both of your times, and I know that you guys is your ceremony on Friday, right?
Yeah, the reception will be on Friday. Yeah.
Friday from 5 to 7 at the Guard Winery, right?
Yeah, Guard Vintners or Guard Winery in downtown Ellensburg. We're also having 3:30 in the afternoon on Friday, chance for people to tour our new health sciences building, which just came online about 2 years ago.
Right.
It's 80,000 square feet, $60 million structure, has the house's department in it.
Yeah, you gave me a quick tour before you
Yep.
guys officially opened. It was beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful building.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to get some, like David said, kind of a reunion type atmosphere, former students, graduates, and former professors there too, so that we can kind of, think about the good old days.
Absolutely.
They're going to say, my gosh, I wish we didn't have any of this stuff when we were there at Central.
I was going to say, when Ethan showed me the building, I was like, oh my God, this would have been a dream. And this might have inspired me to go into academia, or at least to do research, because we did not have these types of, we had, they were baby facilities compared to what you have there. So that would have been pretty fascinating. But no, I greatly appreciate both of your times, and I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story and your journey. And before we end this video, I want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor. It's me. Your greatest gift, if you are watching this on YouTube, is to like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and share this content. If you are listening on a podcast platform, please share away. And of course, if you want to buy me a coffee, you can go to Buy Me a Coffee and share a beverage my way. And if you want to purchase one for the guest that I just interviewed, send it my way and I will gift it to that individual. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.